everyone, my name is Siamak and this is my Geosynthetics podcast. Today I'm here with Mike Dobie and he's one of the people who have been in the geosynthetics industry for such a long time, I would say.
Yep, a long time.
If you want to start with that, my first question is basically where did you start it and how did you end up in the geosynthetics industry?
Oh, I started in Malaysia. In 1991, I joined a company that was then called Netlon Limited.
Mm-hmm.
I took over from my predecessor, who continued to be my colleague for many years, and I happened to be in Malaysia, and opportunity came along. So I stayed there, and I remained in Malaysia then for another couple of years, and then after that moved to Indonesia.
And that's where you're based in?
That's where I am now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Jakarta? And
in Jakarta, the big city, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And you're British from your accent?
I'm British originally, yes.
Okay. Cool. And that's one of the beauties of the geosynthetics industry, I would say. A lot of people in the industry actually have had this chance to travel the world with their work and business. And because I've got a lot of audience who are like young engineers or students. Do you think that can be like if people or students or young engineers are sort of looking at opportunities to travel and learn and do work in different parts of the world?
I think it probably is. I mean, I think for civil engineers in general, that's an opportunity. I'm not sure that geosynthetics increases it.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably in the geotechnical field, there are great opportunities. You come across geotechnical engineers who've traveled all over the place. I mean, certainly in Australia you'll find them, but you'll find them in many places. And I think geosynthetics is an important branch of geotechnical engineering. So
that's right.
Inevitably, I think it does give you a good chance.
Of course.
Yeah, very good.
Of course. So you're based in Indonesia, Jakarta, and then you're here in Brisbane. Just tell us about what took you to Brisbane this time, and was it business or training courses or presentations to engineers?
No, you're right. It's I've been coming to Australia now, including Brisbane, for all my career in Tensar, so that's almost 29 years now. And I'd have to say I've always enjoyed coming here. And I think we've always had very good interaction with engineers in this part of the world. And my main purposes of coming here normally to do things like workshops, design workshops, seminars, so things at a pretty technical level. The main aim of what we do really is educational. Although, like we all do, we work for companies that we have to promote ourselves, whatever we do, whether it's a manufacturer, supplier, or consultant. We still have to promote ourselves, and I like to do this through an educational route. I'm very keen on trying to share with, especially with younger engineers, the background to what we do. So for me, what's really quite important is that engineers should understand the background to the techniques we use, the importance of the materials we use, and how the design methods are relevant to what our final target, which is to design a structure or an application.
Yeah, perfect. No, absolutely. I think, and that's what I think. What is one of your objectives, giving presentations and training courses, is to make sure that the engineers actually know the fundamentals of soil mechanics and geotechnical engineering. If you want to tell us about that.
Yeah. No, I think it's vital. I think if you miss out on the fundamentals, then you're going to misuse things. I think I see a lot of misuse of geosynthetics. Now, I work in a certain part of it. So, for example, I'm not experienced in things like liner systems, but the main area I work in is in the area of geogrids. Materials for reinforcement, stabilisation, and so on like that.
Of course. So then it's, I think the next question would be about mainly the two main sort of applications of geosynthetics in stabilisation and also in reinforcement. So I know you're an expert in both of these areas, and if you want to talk about, let's say, stabilisation first, and then we talk about the reinforcement function of geosynthetics.
Yeah, no, good topics. I mean, one way I try to describe it to people is that these are two important areas, and if you like, we have the upright vertical structures, and we have the horizontal ones, which are the pavements and working platforms, car parks, access roads, that sort of thing. And from the outset, the nature of the geogrid looks to be similar, but as we've developed these ideas, we've realized, especially in things like permanent pavements and working platforms, that the nature of the interaction has to be one where we create a benefit with very small deformation of the system.
That's right.
You can't afford to have a crane creating a deep rut in a working platform to get some benefit from it.
Of course.
So we have the term stabilisation. Stabilisation, I mean, it means to keep something stable. Mm-hmm. It means to stop things moving around. Yep. If you can create that in an aggregate layer, then you're going to get a better performance, and that really is the target of stabilisation. So this is the, if you like, the function of geosynthetic that we are making use of in pavements. Mm-hmm. The term stabilisation has now become well recognised over the last few years. We now have a definition in the new ISO 10318. Yep. We also have the IGS recognising this as a specific function of geosynthetics, and yep. There is a technical committee that's dedicated to stabilisation, and there's even a workshop in Prague happening within the next few weeks.
Yes. Yep.
Which will be, I know some of the people going there, and I think that's going to be a very worthwhile workshop, a 2-day workshop concentrating on this particular function of geosynthetics. I think this is a really important thing.
Yep, no, that's brilliant. Then we're talking about the other function of geogrids and high-strength geotextile, probably, and that is their reinforcement function.
Yeah, no, well, yes. I mean, of course, in reinforcement, we are interested in the strength of the materials, their behaviour at larger strains, larger deformations. I think we all need to remember that when we build reinforced soil structures, they must deform. The geogrid will elongate slightly as it starts to take up load, something that people sometimes forget. Mm-hmm. However, although it sounds like it could be a disaster, in reality it's small. Yeah. Even in polymer geogrids, which sometimes people are calling them extensible. Mm-hmm. I'd have to say it's not a term I think is a very good one. Having the separation between extensible and inextensible reinforcement is not the right way to think about it. All soil masses will deform when you load them, when you create them. I think the nice thing about the deformation of reinforcement and polymer reinforcement is that its deformation is very much consistent with the deformation of the soil. So they kind of deform together. Yeah. And one thing that's nice about this, it creates very ductile structures. Mm-hmm. And for example, some of the things that I find are really helpful in seeing how it works is some of the full-scale testing carried out. For example, shaking table tests on full-scale retaining walls. These have been done, and you see structures almost shaking like a jelly, ending up where they started. Yeah. So if you imagine there was a road on top, it would remain perfectly serviceable, yeah. Providing lifeline routes for people getting in to recover from a disaster like an earthquake. Yeah. So another important function, yep. Equally important but different, and I think the difference between reinforcement and stabilization is sometimes a bit blurred for people. But I think if you look at the evidence and if you look at the nature of performance, it becomes much clearer.
That's where the difference is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. All right. That brings us to my last question, and this is normally. It might be a bit tricky, especially for someone like yourself who has been in the industry for such a long time. The question is one thing that you always remember in your career in geosynthetics industry.
One thing. Oh, that's a good one. I think, yeah. Actually, no. I something crosses my mind because I can remember it very well. It's while I was still working in Malaysia, so that tells you it's a long time ago because I left there 26 years ago. But we had a project in the south, in the state of Johor, a place called Pasir Gudang, and one of the young engineers from our distributor, who's still around, he was down there conducting a simple trafficking trial. It's an unusual one. It was a trafficking trial with a crawler crane, not a common thing to do. And the client was interested to compare the effect of a geogrid, a stabilisation geogrid, with a high-strength geotextile, because he had a source of geotextile which he could have used. So they set up a pavement, and this would be about a 1 metre thick pavement, 2 layers of this material, and they drove the crane backwards and forwards across these sections. And the one with the stabilisation geogrid performed extremely well.
Yep.
The other one was not good at all, the immediate deep rutting.
Yep.
Anyhow, this was probably before mobile phones. Anyhow, somehow the engineer got in touch with me. He said, well, he said, Mike, you should, he said, this geogrid really works.
Yes.
And I thought, for a guy who's already worked in with these materials for many, many years, this is a really good piece of news. And,
exactly.
And still a great friend of mine. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And just to hear that excitement in the voice of, wow, this geogrid really works, that was quite something.
That's a very great moment to have.
It was a good moment, yeah.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Mike, for your time and for you talking to us and to my audience. And this was my Geosynthetics podcast for today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.